Hey everyone, it's Ben Hardy here, and in today's I'm going to be taking the new 250 Land Cruiser off-road, and it snowed just enough that it's going to make everything more difficult in today's video for the Land Cruiser because it's just going to be really slick. I think you guys will really like it. But anyways, let's just get right into the off-roading. So quick rundown with the 250. We've got a stabilizer bar disconnect, which is actually pretty cool to see that working in action. It's very similar to KDSS with the added articulation. I've got 33s on this, so that's the same size as stock. The tires that I have are actually narrower than the stock tires. We're doing pizza cutters in today's video, but we've got about 9 inches of ground clearance, so it'll be interesting to see how this performs. Now, I've only ever done this hill in the snow once before, and actually made it up part of the way. That was with a Land Rover Defender, but I got stuck midway through the hill because the tires were not big enough to get over a rock. Now, I do have it in rock crawl mode. I just have the center differential locked. I will lock the rear differential if things get hairy, but yeah, you can see it's slipping on the side. It lets you know what tires are slipping. So the traction control system is having to intervene quite a bit with this snowy hill, and I'm actually going to, I know I said I wasn't going to lock the rear differential. I'm going to lock it here just because I have some rocks to climb over, and okay. Anyways, and it's nice to have just that added layer of grip when you're climbing over something and you've got the snow. Yeah, this rock right here is what the Defender could not go over, and it was not because of the traction control system, it was simply because the tires in the Defender are so small that it wasn't enough tire to be able to crest the rock. But this thing is doing just fine. Man, that is quite impressive. So I'm going to unlock the rear differential there. Now, I was, you know, you guys could probably see in camera, I was going from side to side a little bit. The car was shifting, but the systems were able to intervene quickly enough to be able to get me back in line. And so it's very confidence inspiring. This is one of the few vehicles that I would actually be comfortable with taking through snow conditions, well, a steep hill with snow conditions. A lot of vehicles, you just don't have the control. Even with, like, the Grenadier, for example, that's got 3 locking differentials. I wouldn't want to take it up that hill in the snow, because once I start, my backpack is falling forward because this is so steep. let's get that fixed. Once you start slipping and sliding with that, you don't have anything else. It's like you don't have a fancy traction control system to bring you back in line. And obviously there's a layer of skill to everything, but there's only so much the mechanical stuff can do. The active braking stuff, although more complex, it's really helpful. Now, this suspension in this is very comfortable off-road with the stabilizer bar disconnected. That is something important to know. It's kind of like a Jeep, right? If you've ever driven a Rubicon with the sway bar connected versus disconnected, with it disconnected, it is so much more comfortable. And it's the same thing here with the 250. With the stabilizer bar disconnected, it's pretty similar in comfort to the 200 series. I just took it through the same course. It's pretty similar in comfort to that. Is that the, yeah, we're gonna downshift a couple times. Actually, we're gonna upshift. The gearing on this is really strange off-road. And I will say it goes up higher in the RPMs than the Grenadier and the 200 series. Now, something to note about these tires is they are mud and snow rated, so that is going to have an effect in terms of my ability to traverse this. Tires do a lot, they really do. But I will say, these modern traction control systems, they can get you places that you shouldn't be able to go considering the tires. Like, I took one of these off-road that had the stock tires that are pretty pathetic, and yeah, it's surprising. This is very easy to off-road. There's no kickback. Like the 200 series, you get a little bit of kickback in the steering. This, I can't really feel what the front end's doing, which is a downside. I don't feel like as confident in that way, but because there's no kickback, it's a little bit more comfortable with the maneuvering, and I feel like I can be a little bit more precise. So I get precision here, but then I can't feel what's going on nearly as much. So pluses and minuses, right? Now, something that I'm noticing here with the 250 that could be a big benefit of this over some of the other off-roaders is that with the rear differential unlocked, it actually does significantly better than with it locked when it's just slick, right? So if it's articulated, the rear differential does smooth things out, and that's kind of a benefit of this over like a 200 series, for example, that does not have a diff lock. Like this is a good example. I'll keep the diff unlocked here through this articulated section, but yeah, through the stuff that's just like steep and slick, it does better with the diff unlocked, surprisingly, because I think it can, with the computers being able to just micromanage every single wheel and doing the braking and everything, I don't know, it just works a little bit better. So the reason why I say that's a benefit over some other off-roaders is, you know, depending on the manufacturer, some off-roaders don't really offer a traction control system like that. Jeep kind of has a system like that, and it's gotten better over the years. It's not quite on the level of Toyota and Land Rover. Ford's system's pretty awful, if I'm being honest. Fords were doing really well when they had the Torsen limited slip differential in the Raptors and stuff. Man, this thing articulates really darn well. Like this, again, I know that I'm only interior shot, but still, it's actually pretty impressive. But anyways, yeah, the Torsen did well, but then Ford added a new active braking system to the Raptors, and it's just awful. So yeah, the system is really impressive, and I think I understand kind of what Toyota was going at with this new Land Cruiser, because I was confused why they added back the rear locking differential. Oh, I went too fast for the stabilizer bar disconnect. I was wondering why they added that back in after having, you know, open diffs for so long, but now I understand. The open diff is just for kind of trail running like this, and then locking the rear differential is for rock crawling, where the 200 series does tend to struggle with once it's fully articulated. So they're trying to make this kind of more of a jack of all trades type deal when it comes to off-roading, it seems. Well, I officially used one of those first edition skid plates. I was driving just a little bit too fast and I kissed a rock, but as horrible as it sounded, everything's completely fine. That's why you get skid plates. And again, I mean, back in the day, that's what people relied on with off-roading. They didn't rely on 2 billion inches of ground clearance, right? They just had some tires that could get them from A to B off-road, and they had tons of skid plates so that when they did come in contact with things, it was fine. And that's also, you know, with the bumpers, it's funny to see, you know, people put the aftermarket steel bumpers on nowadays and they never actually use them, right? The whole reason why people got those was so they could go through brush, right? That's why you have a brush guard, so you can go through brush, and also so if you impact a rock, you're not going to cave in the front end and break the car. So it's just kind of funny how things have departed from their kind of original use. Now people get the bumpers because they look cool, and yeah, it's interesting. Now I will say I can't go quite as fast in this as I could in the Grenadier. So I'm going at a similar pace as I was in the 200 series though, so it makes sense. Again, the clearances that this has, and I'm having no issues with the snow whatsoever. Again, the tires are doing a big part of that, but what I'm noticing is anytime there's even a little bit of slip, the traction control system intervenes very quickly, and that's actually why I've kept the diffs completely, well, I have the center diff locked, but the rear differential completely unlocked the whole time. Man, this thing articulates like a beauty. I don't think it articulates quite as well as the 200 series now that I've gone through more terrain, but it's good enough. And when I say it's not as well as the 200 series, the 200 series seems to stay a little bit more level. Compared to this, I get a little bit more lean, which is telling me that I'm kind of running out of articulation. But man, you really do have a lot of control with this new 250. It's quite impressive. I will say, so far, I have hit into more rocks in this, nothing serious, again, just little taps. But I've hit into more rocks in this than the 200 series. The 200 series, I hit into 1 rock. In this, I've hit into 3. So far. So it's like you really do use the skid plates on this. And if you look underneath, the skid plates do hang down a bit, and so they do kind of decrease the clearances, but I'd rather have the protection than have a little bit more. Like, I bet this rock right here will scrape. We'll see. No, I actually cleared it. It's about the same size as the other rock that I just ran into. Now, I'm still not sold on this whole stabilizer bar disconnect system, excuse me, compared to KDSS, you know, what I have in my Land Cruiser 200, or compared to the new EKDSS that's in the Lexus GX. Again, this articulates well, it just doesn't provide the comfort. And the one thing that I'm also noticing with this is with the KDSS, because it's constantly kind of adjusting depending on how articulated you are, I think that that's probably why I end up bottoming out more on this, because this is just disconnected all the time, right? If you have it disconnected, you have it disconnected. So I don't know. I think that's a downside with this system, but the upside again is the simplicity of the system. I will say first gear in this is pretty darn low. I would say it's even lower than the 200 series, or no, going down this hill, it's about the same. But it's still nice how precise you can be with this. And again, this is making a cakewalk out of all of this, no matter how steep or articulated or anything, because it just has so much grip. And I do think the lower center of gravity helps out quite a bit with off-roading. That's something I've discovered, is these big lifted vehicles, because their center of gravity is so high, and they're so heavy too with everything they've got going on, it actually makes it so they're not as good off-road compared to the stuff that's lower down. And I think more and more people are discovering that, and that's why more people are starting to do some stock mobbing, as we call it, where they just throw all-terrain tires on, because even though you don't have as much ground clearance, if you got the protection, you seem to be able to get through things easier because of the center of gravity. So I've got the 250 up here on the rock, and I want to show you guys that I actually was able to pick up a tire. This is something the 200 series could not do. A traction control system couldn't really figure out how to get it up high enough to be able to pick up a tire. The rear locking differential was able to do that, so that shows you the benefit of having a rear locking differential. Notice that front tire's tucked, and sorry the camera footage being shaky, it's a bit cold. See the tuck here on the rear tire, absolutely massive. And then you can see, again, decent travel and everything, so that stabilizer bar disconnect helps out. We are going to do the, this is the second rock obstacle. I had to skip the first because there's a bunch of people with side-by-sides that were using it as like a trail to get up here, so I didn't want to get in their way. Now, I will say, the control while crawling with this sometimes feels a bit iffy. It's kind of, now part of it is the ground's very slick. Man, am I gonna have the approach for this? Oh no, I'm starting to come up. I took a really aggressive angle, actually, now that I look at it. Wow. Yeah, it's not, it's the brake modulation, and I don't know if it's because it's a hybrid, but I don't, it's not like a dimmer switch that you get with most regular ICE cars. It feels like it's almost more like on-off with the braking. So yeah, it is very hard for me to be smooth with this. It's almost tempting me to use the crawl control. So I don't have the, yeah, so it's trying to get through. That. That's where we're gonna lock the rear differential. Hopefully that popped up on camera with it skipping. Yeah, it's really hard to be smooth with this thing. It's not the worst ever. And I can't turn anymore because I'm too close to that rock on the side. figuring it out. Come on, buddy. Yeah, see, I don't like that. I do not like that at all. It was kind of like, yeah, that was not the most fun. But, we got through it. Show an interior shot with this. Because we didn't do the other obstacle, I wanted to at least show you guys some other off-roading. And I'll do the crawl control right here, which, actually, let's go a little bit slower. So, this is where there might be a benefit to using the crawl control. Is really slick stuff like what we were experiencing in that rock, where I was really struggling with the throttle modulation. This can do it a lot smoother. Man, the difference between the 1-speed and 2-speed, I almost wish it was a little bit of a smaller gap. And again, it's just because I'm worried about clearances here. Now, this light dusting of snow has kind of turned everything into, it kind of gives it like an icy type feel. Not quite full on ice, but kind of I would say an in-between dry and, well, sorry, wet and icy. That's kind of what this feels like. It's in between that in terms of the grip levels. And I'm really curious as to if the 200 series would have been able to get up that with this light coating on it, because it doesn't have a rear locking differential. Like, I had to use the rear locker. I probably could have also gotten that with crawl control too, though. Something to always kind of note. But I really do like how smooth this is. Gives you a lot of confidence if you have to go down something that is relatively steep and slick, right? You want to maintain control. You don't want to turn into a giant sled. That's always terrifying. I'm going to actually turn off the crawl control now. But yeah, that's very, very smooth system. It's a lot quieter than the old system. And yeah, the control on it is quite impressive. We're going to start with the rear differential unlocked. And walking up it, it's pretty slick. It's not the worst, but this is definitely going to test out the tires and the traction control system. And this side is a lot rockier than the other side, so it'll be interesting to see how the system works it out. It's not even flashing. Weird. I guess I'm going at a slow enough pace. There we go. Ah, it used enough intervention that you can audibly hear it. So again, I'm still unlocked. And that's what I was saying earlier, is it seems like if you're not super articulated, having the rear differential unlocked might be beneficial to just let the traction control system figure it out rather than just having the rear end locked up. Yeah, you just gotta go nice and slow. That's what the Land Cruiser's like, nice and slow, so that the systems have a minute to figure everything out. I keep this conclusion very concise. This is my third time filming it. Every single time I look at how long the conclusion is, it's like 5+ minutes, and I'm like, that's too long. So the new Land Cruiser and just Toyota's new off-road platform, they expect you to be in 4-wheel drive high and low, and just switching between the two quite often. That's what I've discovered. 4-wheel drive low doesn't go above fourth gear. You can use multi-terrain select, you can use crawl control in four-wheel drive high. So they expect you to switch between the two. It's kind of cool. It's also kind of annoying. I like being able to just go into four-wheel drive low when I'm off-road and just stay there, but it's easy to switch between the two, so it's not a problem whatsoever. The EKDSS system is much better than the stabilizer bar disconnect, so the Lexus product is going to be better on that front. The Land Cruiser has much better angles than the GX and the LX, so that's the biggest limiting factor on the Lexus products. And so it's like, I don't feel like you can win in the US market with this generation of Toyota's off-road, because you either have an inferior suspension system and better off-road angles, or you have worse off-road angles on the Lexus product and you have a better suspension system. And that's a big reason as to why I purchased a 200 series Land Cruiser, because it has regular KDSS, it's not EKDSS, and it has angles that are as good as the 250. Actually, they're better than the 250. And so it's like you get the best of both worlds. So my personal advice, if you're actually into off-roading, the 200 series Land Cruiser, I know people think it's overrated, but it's really hard to beat it. If you own a 5th gen 4Runner, you'll be super impressed with this new 250 Land Cruiser. You'll also be impressed with the new 4Runner as well. They've changed quite a bit in a significant way to make it so that those are just more practical. They're more practical off-road, but that's kind of my take. I think the Lexus product has all the cool tech. It just has horrible angles because of the bumpers, so that's a no-go for me. So if you're going to do off-roading every so often, the Lexuses will be fine. If you're going to off-road all the time, you're going to want to get a 4Runner or a Land Cruiser 250. But if you've got the cash and if you're into off-roading like I am, doing it all the time, the 200 series Land Cruiser just can't be beat. The only way to beat that is if we got the 300 series in the US, but I don't think that's going to be happening anytime soon. Hopefully that kind of clears up the water for Toyota's new off-roaders. They're really impressive. The new crawl control and everything is super impressive. You can use it in reverse, you can use it in four-wheel drive high. It's a really cool system. It's just quieter than the old one. It doesn't really seem like it's that much better. So that's my 2 cents.